Columbia River Knife and Tool Company has maintained over the course of a number of years some very good relationships with several, well, actually many, custom knife makers and designers. Some of these are more well-known people, some of them are less well-known, some of them have been in the knife industry for a very lengthy period of time, and some of the custom knife makers have a bit of a less of a history in the industry. But overall, CRKT has brought to the forefront some very, very talented makers and designers. One of these makers I've had the pleasure of meeting on a few occasions. That's Mr. Lucas Burnley. He has been with CRKT for at least several years now, if memory serves properly. I know it's been at least 2 years, probably more like 3 or 4. And Lucas has introduced here recently the BUKU. That's B-U-K-U. It is, I don't know if this was a knife that he originally had as a custom or not, but the CRKT BUKU is a more recent addition to the Columbia River Knife and Tool lineup. This knife, it's obviously stands out as having a Kukri history to it, a Kukri, imagination from Mr. Burnley, and it's basically a folding Kukri. It's not complete and total in that regard, so there are purists that would argue the point, but you can see that that's where his inspiration came from. Now, just for some general particulars, I can say that this knife is a little heavier than it appears. When you just look at it, it's got more heft than it actually appears, which would probably come in very handy for some end user purposes. I'm told that it has a weight of 7.7 ounces, and I'll just have to rely on that as being accurate because I don't have a scale handy. We can check the measurement. It's supposed to be 7.7 inches in overall open length, and actually I'm wrong on that. I said 7.7, I meant 7.7 ounces. It's supposed to be 8.31 inches open, and it certainly looks to be all of that. Let's check metric, and it looks to be in at about just at about 210 millimeters in length open. Closed, it's supposed to be 4.85 inches in closed length. Certainly looks to be all of that. And on the metric side, at about 122 millimeters in length. The material on this is that is on the handle and the lock is 2 CR13 stainless steel. So it's a stainless steel material on the handle and the lock, and the blade is 8 CR13 MOV. Quite frankly, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not a metallurgist. I'm not really big into it. I let the makers talk about the metallurgy of their knives and their designs, and I'm no metal engineer, so we'll rely on that as well. The blade length is supposed to be 3.75 inches in length, and certainly appears to be exactly that. And blade length metrically is just at about 93 millimeters. The thickness is 0.144 thick, and the Rockwell hardness is supposed to be between 58 and 60 RC. The blade has a flat grind to it, and just eyeballing it, certainly appears to be a flat grind, a very well done flat grind, not a lot of artifacts in the blade. A little bit of artifacts here on the flats, but it is a satin finish. And again, this just really feels very well. This knife retails at approximately $70 USD, or United States currency. The pivot is just a bit sticky. It's not real loose. That's fine. It'll probably work in. Keep in mind this is a factory knife. On this particular model, the blade is very well centered between the handles. Again, just eyeballing that myself. Yeah, very well done. So quality control from the factory is everything that we would expect from CRKT. Again, it opens with some effect, very determined opening, and the lock on the frame lock is engaged at approximately a little more than the halfway point. Pivot pin has an Allen wrench access, Allen screws on the other areas, or strictly a pin. The jimping, there's a small amount of jimping on the back of the blade near the pivot. It's not overly aggressive, but gives your thumb some purchase. And nothing is over aggressive on this. The edges are smooth. Nothing that's going to really cut into your hand. You're not going to need to wear gloves with this knife. It is a plain blade. I do not think that there is a serrated version available. Of course, you could always have that done after the fact, especially with the price point of this knife. The opening hole is oval in shape. There is an integral clip that will go relatively deep pocket, and that will only go tip up. It does not appear that there's any allowance for changing this to a tip down carry. So in the pocket, the knife would be tip up. Nothing that just really stands out other than this is just a beautiful, simple knife, much like a lot of other things. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Sometimes a person is just gorgeous physically, but yet once you get to know them, the personality makes them glow even better. And frankly, this is kind of like one of those situations where the personality really comes out in this knife. There's nothing flashy about it, nothing overt. Everything is satin. This is almost like a tumbled satin on the handle and on the lock. And again, this will be a very nice performer. It will be a bit heavy. It's about weight ratio is very similar to some of the other larger folders. Zero tolerance comes to mind. I don't want to really get into comparisons with other manufacturers, but some of the larger zero tolerance knives have this same type of a weight issue, and so it would probably carry very similar to that. So we'll be putting this through some paces in carrying, possibly do a pass round at some point, and I don't see anything just offhand that comes into play. It looks like we've got an over travel screw here. The inside, there is something in there. Actually, there's a bit of an over travel piece. So the engineering of this knife, it looks like it's a lot was put into this knife for a factory made knife. So the CRKT BUKU, and outstanding, Lucas. You did a fantastic job with this.